Hello, welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It with Letitia. My name is Letitia Smith, and I am the CEO of Premier Tax and Business Solutions. I am also the author of So You Think You Want to Be a Boss. Please go to our website, check it out, or you can also check it out on Amazon.com. So today's topic is entrepreneurship and parenting. Should you do it or not? Well, listen, I can be honest with you. When I started out as an entrepreneur, it actually started almost 20 years ago. I was a young mother, a wife at the time, and during that time, I really didn't know if I wanted to be an entrepreneur. What I did know is I was working in corporate America, and it wasn't something that I actually thought I would leave. When I first got into corporate America, my dream was to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Obviously, as you can see, that's not where I am right now, so that was not the path that I took. I can tell you, being a parent, especially when you go from being married to being single, and then you add on being an entrepreneur, is definitely challenging. I can give you some tips and things that I did to make it a little bit easier for me. But what I can tell you, the word is easier, not easiest. And what I mean by that is simply exactly what I just said. Being an entrepreneur, it requires a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of trial and errors, and really mindset. I talk a lot about mindset, and you will hear that throughout conversations that I have with guests that I will bring on the show at some point in interviewing, because when it's all said and done, that will be the thing that's going to get you through the tough times. When I started in entrepreneurship, I had a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a newborn. My kids are now ages 23, going on 24, 22 going on 23, and 17 years old. So that tells you how long I have been on this journey. While your kids are young, to me, and I can say this now because my kids are older, it's a lot easier because you can put them on a schedule. In my opinion, a lot easier. But more importantly, I say it's easier because they're not in band, they're not playing basketball, they're not in any other extracurricular activities. So the time that you have scheduled with them is more set because it's more so either going to school or in daycare and coming back home. Doing it that way, now you can set your schedule to be a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6 or however that will look like, because you don't have to now add in all these different activities that your kids are involved in. The most important thing I can tell you, if you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur and you are parenting, is first start with your village. For me, I didn't really have much of a village. I am not a native of Georgia. My family is from South Carolina, and my best friend lives about an hour away from me. So your village, though, does not necessarily have to be your family. They can be your friends. They can be teachers. They can be associates that you've met in different organizations. They can be people, that's on the PTA. But you definitely want to be able to have a village that can help you along the way. Most parents will tell you that it takes a village to raise children. I am one of those parents that I can tell you it definitely takes a village. I did not do it by myself. A lot of times I had to rely on coaches when my kids got older. I had to rely on daycare services. I had to rely on other parents that I have met along the way. So first thing is, yes, have yourself a village. Get one if you don't have one, and wherever that looks like for you. The second thing I would say, if you are an entrepreneur and you are a single parent, you want to have a clear plan in what that entrepreneurship is going to look like for you. And what I mean by that is have a schedule. Have a to-do list, write things down, because your time is very limited. Being a parent as well as trying to run a business, the thing that gets people a lot of times is time management. Well, the best way to manage your time is to schedule what needs to be done. Typically, what I did and what helped me was I got a calendar, and I'm old school. I write things down. Even though we have all this great technology, I still like to write things down. So I would get a calendar, and I would go ahead and write down all of my kids' doctor's appointments. I would write down when they got older, any events that they may have had, any games, any of those things that would cause me to have to be able to shift my focus and attention to make sure that they're getting to all these places they need to get to. And then I would plan my work schedule simply around that. That is the easiest thing I can tell you to do, and it will make your life a lot more easier. The other thing is that you want to utilize the times that you have. In other words, if your kids are in school, let's say from 8 to 3, depending on their ages and grade level, then you want to make sure that you're getting up an extra hour earlier to prepare and get things ready, prepare your mindset, prepare your schedule, as well as going to bed possibly an hour later for the same reason. Again, it's all about time management. And as a single mother, you are it. You know, you are the parent that is doing the carpooling. You are the parent that's taking them to all their appointments. You are just everything. Okay, so we talked about going to bed later. We talked about getting up an extra hour earlier. So let's put all that together, and now we can see what that will look like. So for parents who have younger children, obviously if your kids are, under 1 year old, that may be a little bit harder in terms of giving them a bedtime or a bed schedule. I would say the earlier you start with that, the better. For me, during the time in the beginning, like I said, I was married, and my husband at the time worked third shift. So I wanted to also make sure that we had our one-on-one time. So our bedtime for our kids were 8 o'clock in the evening. I worked 7 to 4, and he worked 11 to 7. And so I would get off at 4 o'clock, and I would actually go home as opposed to going and picking them up at the daycare so that I can go ahead and prepare for dinner uninterrupted. That way, by the time I went and picked them up and I got them home, dinner was ready so that we can sit down as a family, and we would eat between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. And from 6:30, 7 o'clock to about 8 o'clock, right when it's time for them to go to bed, it is time for us to do baths. If we had time to read a story, we would do that. We would say our prayer, and we would be tucked in. And then from 8:30 to roughly about 10:30, that would be the time that I would spend with my spouse. Now, obviously, if you are working a full-time job, and you're wanting to be an entrepreneur and you're transitioning into that schedule may look a little bit different. So you're probably asking, well, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. One of the things that I would suggest is meal prep. Yes, that sounds like a lot of work in the beginning. It will be a lot of work. So you would spend your Saturdays and Sundays being able to do meal prepping, so that now, remember I said earlier that I would come home after I got off work at 4 o'clock. I would spend that hour and a half preparing dinner. Well, if you're doing a meal prep either on a Saturday or a Sunday or both days, just depending on what schedule is easiest for you, now you can actually have less time. So instead of it being an hour and a half, now you cut that at least half, because it's more so now just getting everything heated and plated so everyone can sit down and eat. You still take that same time frame after you're done, and now you get an earlier start to get the kids ready for bed. Maybe now they're in bed at 7:15, 7:30, but they're still on schedule for 8 o'clock, and you can take that 30 minutes now and working on your business. And I know what you're thinking. Gosh, it's just 30 minutes. What actually can I do for 30 minutes? One of the things that I've learned the hard way is that a lot of times, in doing your business, you feel like if I am not working 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, whatever that looks like a day in your business, which to me is pretty much damn near impossible, that I'm not working my business. You will be surprised that consistency goes a long way. that 30 minutes, 7 days a week now turns into several hours of you consistently doing your business. It's much easier to fit in 30 minutes than to try to fit in 2 hours. Now, obviously, it's going to take you a little bit longer to be able to transition from corporate America to getting into your job or your business full time. But what it does do is it gives you consistency. It gives you something that is more tangible, something that you can actually feel comfortable and confident that you can do it. Now, I'm not saying that this is the way to build your business all the way full time, but what I'm saying is that this is a way to get you started while you are working on your plan. At the same time, if you are married and have a spouse, obviously you want to have a conversation with them and get them involved as much as possible. The second thing I would tell you to do, so we talked about in the beginning, making sure that you have your schedule. You're putting things on your calendar, your kids' appointments. If they have activities, you have that on your calendar as well, and you're scheduling around that. We also talked about if the kids are younger and they're in daycare and what that time will look like. We also talked about, okay, now we're going to shift from being young to now that they're older, so they're teenagers. Some may say teenagers are easier than it is for the kids being younger. And I would say it's all in your perspective. At least when they are older, now you don't have to worry about giving them a bath. You can just be more directive in saying things. You know, they can be a little bit more independent and fixing their own plates, things of that nature. But you still have to be responsible for getting them to appointments and getting them to places that they need to be. I would say in situations like that, the formula doesn't change in terms of still putting everything on your calendar and knowing what is scheduled, when it's scheduled, so you can still work around that time frame with them. The other thing is still utilizing your village. We talked about your village earlier. You want to still be able to utilize them as much as possible. But now that your kids are older and there's less thing you have to worry about doing, now you should have at this point an hour, 2 hours, even in some cases 3 hours if you're still working a corporate America job, that you can now focus on your business consistently every day. At the end of the day, I would tell you consistency will get you more results than you trying to work 10, 12 hours and you burn yourself out. I know a lot of other blogs will tell you if you're not eating your business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you don't want it. And I will tell you, in my opinion, that is not the most healthy and effective way to do it. You need that time to be able to rejuvenate. You need that time to be able to replenish. You need that time to be able to make sure that you have a clear mind and that you still enjoy what you are doing. I would also recommend, as being an entrepreneur and being a parent, is get your kids involved. That's one of the things that it took me a while to learn to do. You know, sometimes, especially younger kids, they don't understand that mommy is always working. They don't understand the reason mommy is always working. They don't understand that now mommy went from being able to read me a story every single night to now she's no longer reading the story. They don't understand, and a lot of times, even if they did, they don't care. What I have found is that when you have conversations that's age appropriate with your children and you get them involved and they get to be able to see why you are doing what you're doing, and more importantly, enjoy the fruits of your labor. And what I mean by that, and I started doing this early on in my career, is that if I got a client that I've been working on and it took a lot of time, one of the first things I would do, I would tell my kids, we're going to celebrate. Mommy just got a new client. So now instead of us eating together as a family because I had to go and prepare that meal, we would actually go to dinner and I would allow them to choose where we would go. So now they are excited that we are now getting ready to go out to eat. And I know that I want to go to Burger King or I want to go to McDonald's or wherever that place is, we get to go because mommy just got a new client. Now, they still may not understand exactly what it means to get a new client, but what they do understand is that mommy got something, and as a result, we are getting something too. So we all are reaping the rewards of the efforts that mommy has put into. So having those conversations with your children at an early age and them getting involved helps them to understand why you are working the way that you are working, why you are now having to miss some games, some practices. And let me be clear with you, because I didn't say this earlier. Entrepreneurship and being a parent, you're going to drop the ball sometimes. Matter of fact, you're going to drop the ball a lot of times. I can't say that it's okay. I just can tell you that it's going to happen. It's inevitable. You will not be able to be the best homemaker in terms of cooking 3-course meals, 5-course meals all the time. You know, sometimes you're going to be washing one load at a time because you just don't have time to do everything. You just have to understand that my time is valuable and how I spend it is very important in order for me to be able to build my company as well as to be the best parent that I can be. And that is okay as well. So getting your family involved, getting your village involved, getting your children involved very early on in your career, in my opinion, will save you a lot in the long term. I didn't realize until my kids were much older that while there are things that I did to try to help them be involved, I didn't have a lot of conversations with them like I should have, especially when they got older. And for that reason, they didn't understand why some of the sacrifices that I made, what was it all about? And what I mean by that is, I said earlier about, when they were younger, and I said, okay, mommy, gets this client, we're going to go out to dinner, and they chose Burger King, McDonald's, or whatever it was at the time, and we went. Well, as the business grew, that meant that now I had less time, as well as they got older. So in my mind, because they are older, now I no longer have to do as many of those things as helping them to be involved by giving incentives when I close a business or close a client. That is not the case. They still need to understand. They get to see, because now we go from going to Burger King or McDonald's or going to a restaurant that sells, seafood and steak and things like that. However, you still need to have those conversations. What you are doing is implanting hard work and efforts and results in your children at an early age. But they do need to continue to see that, and you don't get lost in that. The last thing I will say before we end this episode is always give yourself grace. It's already hard being a single parent, and it's hard being an entrepreneur. Putting those two things together makes it a lot harder. Give yourself grace. You're not going to always get it right. It's not going to always be exactly the way that you thought it was going to be. But what I can tell you, if you stick it out, oh my goodness, it is so rewarding in the end. Again, this is Letitia Smith with Premier Tax and Business Solutions. I hope you enjoyed this segment of Let's Talk About It with Letitia. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button. And if there's a topic that you would like for me to discuss, or someone who would like to be a guest on this particular podcast, please feel free to send us a message. Go to our website and check us out at www.premiertaxga.com. Dang, my phone ring at the same time. Is it